Analog horror.
Some are good, some are bad, some are scary, and others aren't. While several projects such as Marble Hornets existed beforehand, this subgenre of horror truly kicked off with the smash release of Local 58, combining elements of creepy found footage videos, lost media cartoons, and eerie broadcast interruptions. Soon after, a new contender came in with the release of Gemini Home Entertainment, which turned the formula on its head and began using the art of VHS tapes instead of the traditional broadcast. About a year later, YouTuber Kane Pixels leaves a massive impact with his phenomenal Backrooms animation, with an incredibly well-animated video that began a massive series along with expanding upon the popular creepypasta. Now, the reason I'm giving you this analog horror origin story is to give newer viewers a better idea of what this subgenre is as a whole. And for beginners, it's very difficult to choose somewhere to start due to the countless number of videos and projects released within the past few years. Well, fret not, dear viewer, for I will give you a guide/analysis on what I think are the best places to start, and also gush about series that veterans will most likely want to hear about. Today, I will be going in depth onto 6 different series to give a good idea on where to start, and to give many different options in case some of them just don't click. So, with that out of the way, let's dive into this ever-increasing rabbit hole known as analog horror. So, where's the best place to start? Maybe a series that'll give you a grasp on the concept of analog horror, something that paved the way for others to follow. Well, maybe you should start with Local 58. Released on October 31st of 2017 by Chris Strove, Local 58 slowly popularized the trend now known by many as analog horror, even with some other series coming well before Local 58's introduction. However, Local 58 arguably has the most impact, and it's quite obvious to see why with each episode. At the start of every episode, it seems normal, mundane, and completely uninteresting, displaying the list of broadcasts for the rest of the day. However, things quickly become more unhinged and disturbing as the duration of each video drags on. Take the first video, You Are on the Fastest Available Route, for example. At first, it's just the standard broadcast until the text deletes itself and cuts to some eerie found footage segment. Already a bit unsettling. And it seems the GPS doesn't want to help and adds to the unease when she tells the cameraman to drive past the do not enter signs and turn off their headlights.
Head east for 1/4 of a mile, then follow signs for do not enter. Continue on unnamed road. Then, in 300 feet, turn off your headlights.
At this point, this guy is asking for what's coming to him. A few seconds after the second request, everything goes haywire before the car ends up crashing, while the GPS yells that the destination is approaching you.
Rerouting. Make a U-turn. Your destination is behind you. Rerouting. In 500 feet, your destination will be on in 300 feet. Your destination in 250 feet. Rerouting. Your destination will...
There's also Contingency, one of the more disturbing entries, where a normal broadcast is interrupted by a video used for if the US were to lose a war, encouraging everyone to cancel their life subscriptions, putting it in the best possible terms. Not only does this whole thing just feel so disturbing and unsettling, but subtle messages saying how this message will continue to play until no one is alive to read it is just so eerie. Not to mention that it tells the viewer to first cancel the life subscriptions of their children and pets. There's Real Sleep, a video that was most likely used to brainwash viewers with the uncanny faces, bizarre audio, and disturbing imagery. In Weather Service, the EAS warning goes back and forth between going outside to stare at the moon and staying inside and avoiding it and mirrors, ending with a shot of the moon and distant screaming. Skywatching expands on this moon terror by showing the moon just appearing closer to the Earth, along with very fleshy parts of the moon, and even an arrow pointing to something. By far the most disturbing, by my accord at least, is Show for Children, where this cute little skeleton just walks through a graveyard with the moon staring at him. Gadav, as he's named, looks into the grave and finds a rotting corpse. He continues, finds another grave, and sees this, then travels down a tunnel, lies down, and looks up as the moon approaches, and he finally dies. Now, many of these are not extremely connected, and it's hard to piece together the lore of the series. Because of the rapid jumps back and forth between different formats, it is difficult to gain a grasp sometimes, and the story isn't as clear-cut as many other series that I'll talk about later. But with that aside, the quality of these uploads certainly set the standard when it came to establishing this new subgenre. Not only are there plenty of creepy and just outright unsettling imagery, but the vague and mysterious story will definitely keep you invested in constantly guessing as to what will happen next, or trying to comprehend what you just witnessed. Take the Show for Children, for example, here. All as ordinary as walking in a graveyard at the middle of the night with a creepy-looking moon looking at you can get. And then, as little Kardov looks into a grave, he sees a petrified corpse and a dismembered creature making noises. This series has the tendency to go from tame to completely crazy within the flip of a coin, and it definitely set a standard for analog horror that is hard to top. Not to mention that real sleep actually kind of messes with your eyes, as you can see the imprints of the faces on the backdrop even after they, quote, disappear. Don't worry folks, I still have dreams. Everything about this series feels so incredibly eerie and unsettling. Like there is always something behind your back. Something is always watching, and you can tell that everything is about to go wrong, and yet you're powerless to stop anything that occurs. Plus, the series develops several tropes common within the subgenre of analog horror, including the static interruptions of broadcasts that were mimicked several hundreds of times by others, vague and mysterious lore that's kind of hard to piece together even after several rewatches, and subtle messages telling you to end it all, to put it simply. Needless to say, Local 58 is definitely a good place to begin your analog horror journey, and it's honestly no secret as to how and why it has found the success and praise it absolutely deserves. Now, let's say that Local 58 just didn't work for you. Let's say that you didn't like how loosely connected everything is and just wanted something a bit more grounded and explained. A sense of story, if you will. Maybe you prefer the endless and freakish possibilities of body horror, the terror of advancing technology, or even a cosmic threat bound to devour and destroy everything we all love. Well, from this description, you're looking at Gemini Home Entertainment. Beginning on November 17th of 2019, Gemini, as I will keep calling it for simplicity's sake, expanded the realm of analog horror by using VHS-style entries instead of Local 58's broadcast formula. With 18 episodes, and one removed non-canonical one, series creator Remy Abode truly captured the sense of strangeness and terror seen in his series. Typically, the formula Gemini follows is an instructional tape of some kind that'll slowly distort over time until it becomes incredibly disturbing and scary. Take the first episode, World's Weirdest Animals, for example here. At first, it's just teaching us about great prairie chickens and burrowing owls, formatted like an educational film that I'd actually want to watch. But soon after, this third mysterious animal is pictured to be shown everywhere. The music cuts out, and the background changes color to a dark maroon as we are introduced to creatures known as woodcrawlers. Woodcrawlers are described to be excellent hunters and burrow under large homes and families, and according to this and several other sources from the series, they seem to be body snatchers. Storm Safety Tips seems to try and calm viewers and prepare for storms, only to provide eerie and creepy messages that definitely would not calm me down if I were viewing these tapes, saying how my home doesn't belong to me anymore, that the radio is producing auditory hallucinations, and that my tears are filled with salt. Next thing you know, there are lights everywhere, and congratulations, you're prepared to protect yourself and your family from storms. Later on, you learn about a summer camp with such activities like archery, canoeing, watching the harvest lights, and opening doors. Another episode, Lethal Omen commercial, takes place in said camp and is presented as an in-universe video game, which you can actually play. Yeah, you heard me right, Remy Abode actually created a video game with multiple endings for the viewer to play, which is fairly cool if you ask me, and it's in his video description for the Lethal Omen commercial, so go check that out. Soon after, we learn about nature's mockery and deep root disease, expanding off of the body horror, with one of the symptoms of said disease being the feeling of new bones growing in. Soon after, we are shown in vague yet excruciating detail of what this looks like, and this is where I will leave a timestamp for those who don't want to watch this happen, but just know that you have been warned. And if you thought that this was gruesome, the 1985 Moonlight Acres Christmas Party shows the result of someone who has potentially fully been transformed by the disease. Shifting tendons and wretched hands also explains some of this, with the former of the two having probably the most disgusting moment in the series, where a deep root victim on the ceiling begins screaming and his stomach opens up, only for us to learn that his stomach was occupied. Once again, I will leave a timestamp for those who don't want to watch. On top of all of the woodcrawler and deep root disease shenanigans, there's the Games for Kids video and the Home Invasion Help and Safety, which I will leave completely unspoiled because I think they are personally some of the darkest sides of the story, and one in particular has a moment that still scares me to my core. Advanced Mining Vehicle even shows these weird light bulb creatures under the Earth's surface that they made into marketable plushies, appearing to be mass-spawning woodcrawlers beneath the Earth's surface. With all of these crazy creatures and diseases running around, you'd think that this would be the worst of everything. Guess what? There's even more going on. Technology is rapidly evolving in this world, being able to record and capture photos and videos of your dreams, and developing artificial intelligence and writing story prompts. As these prompts go on, they become more coherent yet more unnerving. Later on, with Sleep Image Visualizer, we are shown many eerie and unsettling shots and images of these white mannequin things and more door knocking. And if you thought this was bad, just you wait. In between everything we've already discussed, there's a video titled Our Solar System, where we finally get to see the one thing that has caused everything: the iris. Yes, there is a sentient planet past Neptune that is trying to take over and devour the Earth. In Crusader Probe Mission, we're shown haunting photos of these horrid and fleshy moons and the inside of the iris. What's really terrifying to me about the iris is that there's nothing we can do against it. Sure, maybe we can kill a few woodcrawlers, but humanity has nothing to defend itself from a giant sentient planet trying to eat it. And the developing technology in the series seems to be warning humanity of their fate, with cryptic messages and eerie visions. Hell, there are even several endings in Lethal Omen where it shows the iris about to devour the earth or rapidly approaching. Okay, but steering away from the much more clear-cut story, is the quality any good? Yes it is, and you should go watch it like right now. Not only are the videos themselves edited to look similar to something I would believe would come from that era, but the found footage segments are legitimately spectacular. Even with all of the limitations like using what appears to be cardboard for the woodcrawler's legs in episode 1, this series has so many incredible standout shots and sequences, like the ending of our solar system, the footage from World's Weirdest Animals, the entirety of Home Invasion Help and Christmas Eve Party, and the haunting screams of the Wilderness Survival Guide. Even some of the stuff that wasn't live action and was animated was amazing, like in Shifting Tendons, the Advanced Mining Vehicle, and the ending of Camp Information Guide. Not to mention how Remy went out of his way to make a game with multiple endings and more lore packed into it. With several mysteries left behind for the viewer to put together and unravel, it makes the sudden realizations and clicks feel that much more powerful and interesting. And along with the new library episodes being released, the newest upload being just a couple weeks ago as of recording this, it seems we quite haven't seen the end of Gemini just yet. Combining all of these aspects together into one neat yet horribly grotesque bundle, with the cosmic and body horror, the creepy technology, and fantastic video quality, Gemini Home Entertainment cements itself as one of the all-time greats of analog horror, and I, quite frankly, can't wait to see what else they have in store. Alright, so maybe Gemini was a bit too extreme for you with all of the body horror and existential shenanigans. Maybe you want something less graphic but equally dark and thrilling. Perhaps even something based off of a popular series, but with minor tweaks and changes to the story to keep yourself guessing, or you just want to be in for a dark and disturbing ride. Well then, give the FNAF VHS a try.
Do you have the slightest idea how little that narrows it down?
Okay, so as it turns out, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of uploads related to or titled as FNAF VHS. There's the folks at Reach Animations with fantastic character animations for Ennard, good voice acting, and where the IRS finally finds the tax-skipping Funtime Foxy.
Open fire!
There's Spectre, who makes similar quality videos to the Backrooms animations with very good camera movements, voice acting, and incredible chase scenes, albeit it is very short in terms of episodes. And of course there's the original by Squimpus McGrimpus. However, today I will be looking at Baddington's remake of that series, or as I'll call it, BHS. BHS was initially teased in March 1st of 2021, and the series' first episode released on March 24th. Baddington, with Squippus' permission, remade the series that pioneered the FNAF VHS genre. Now, the main reason I'm talking about Baddington's series compared to the original is quite simple. Baddington's character animations are freaking phenomenal. The way that the animatronics are animated feels so incredibly alive and smooth, and it's genuinely crazy how amazing this entire series looks at a first glance. I'd also like to talk about the animatronic redesigns, which I think also look very good. I especially really like Freddy and Foxy's designs as well. Everything about this series looks incredibly good, and I can confidently say that the horror is also on the same level of quality as the production. This being Five Nights at Freddy's, the story is incredibly vague, with a heavy emphasis on murder and uncanny animatronics. This one is arguably the darkest series I've talked about so far, although we will cover one series I think is a bit more disturbing. Lots of creepy bits are sprinkled in throughout these videos, like subtle flashes and jump scares, video glitches, and genuinely scary found footage segments. The teaser video, for example, showed viewers just a demo of what Baddington is capable of and got viewers hyped, with Freddy's calm voice paired with his uncanny and robotic movements, followed by Foxy's sudden camera hogging. The episode after is a shot-for-shot remake of Squippus' original video, although there are several additions and changes that made it even more creepy. Bonnie's joint movement test shows the viewer a guide to fixing Bonnie, only for it to go horribly long with a short sequence using the flashlight thingamabob from Sister Location. But the next episode, Sound Response Check, I kid you not, was the sole reason in me covering this series over the original. In fact, I'm not even going to try and explain what happens and just have you go watch the original video and support the creator. Come back when you're finished with that. And next up we have Pirate Cove pre-show, which was apparently taken down by YouTube for being too disturbing, if that already says enough of what happens. A standard video plays that I would assume plays at the restaurant for Foxy's attraction, where the voice acting I think peaks here. I just think it's really good, and it genuinely makes me like Foxy even more in the series. And at the end of each video, there are children in a playroom sitting there with cheering. Throughout each rewatch of the video, however, it keeps changing and becoming more and more disturbing, as each animatronic, one by one, gets stuffed with a corpse, and each child begins to slowly disappear. There's even one where Chica and Foxy are the only unstuffed animatronics, but when Chica goes to sing, it transitions into a young girl's scream. But eventually, the tape is said to be illegal, and we see an uncensored split-second frame of a stuffed Foxy. After this, no children are left, except for one Spring Bonnie, who reveals all of the dead corpses of the kids. Wonderful. Soon we're shown Foxy standing in a hall watching as Fredbear is being hung by something. Non-existent video is the last Baddington video that is a direct remake of Squippus' videos, in which we are shown this incredible found footage segment of this exoskeleton barely being able to sing Happy Birthday. We see the aftermath of Fredbear biting a kid, and we even see what happens during a spring lock failure. Finally, we're shown our first image of Baddington's Springtrap. Now, due to some small Twitter controversy, Baddington returned to the series with the same characters, but is going in a different narrative direction. But all in all, I'm excited to see where this series goes, since Baddington now has complete creative freedom with it. There are also just plenty of disturbing and grotesque scenes that might make it difficult to watch on first viewing, and the loud noises do occasionally happen, along with subtle details that people would have to catch on rewatch or rewind. But once again, Baddington does an incredible job with this series. BHS proves that even if your idea isn't originally your own, you're able to take the characters or stories from said series and make minor tweaks or just write whatever you want for them and still make it good. And this is just one FNAF VHS series. There are multiple similarly incredible ones out there as well. As long as you can handle some heavy subject matter, you're in for quite the ride. So I guess child murder is a bit extreme, and maybe you'd like something that's more supernatural and alien yet believable in the weirdest possible way. Well, check out the Kane Pixels Backrooms series. Now, it is basically impossible for me to cover everything presented in this segment in order to keep your guys' attention, and I'm not even going to remotely dive into the ever-expanding lore of this iteration of the creepypasta. But this will be more of me gushing over what makes this series great and why you would need to check it out if you're going to get into analog horror. Now, it probably goes without saying that this is one of the most visually and technically impressive projects I have ever seen on the YouTube platform. Even though this was apparently done in Blender, all of the found footage segments look as if they were filmed at an actual, real location. The sound design and camera movements especially help, feeling like they've been filmed in live action and not Blender of all things. The VHS filter also helps hide any imperfections, making for some of the most visually impressive segments in analog horror history. And due to this absurdly astounding video quality, the horrors lurking in the corners of each video hit even harder. Yes, Kane does tend to use loud noises to catch people off guard, but it also adds to the terror of each jump scare, as well as what comes afterward, the chase scenes. Beyond the iconic concept itself, I'm absolutely certain these chase scenes are the best parts of this series. Just the camera movements, the freakishly high stakes, the monsters' noises and design, the voice acting, and even the animation itself still looking crisp and clean. Everything in these chase scenes comes together to make something truly worthy of being so iconic and popular. Take my favorite scene in the entire series, for example, when an async employee falls down a pit and is investigating a house, and then he thinks he finds someone. Then, in reality, he finds something.
I think I found him.
Sorry, can you repeat that? Marvin?
That's not a person.
What is that?
That is not a person!
What? Marvin, talk to me. What do you see?
Along with this, the use of the seemingly endless string of halls and corners builds up suspense and makes it feel like at any second something lurking in the corner will leap out for a quick scare. Certain videos have this incredibly built-up tension that never quite is fully released until the monsters make their first appearance. And until then, that tension is kept and built up throughout the scenes, never letting go until those heart-pounding chase scenes kick in. And while I won't dive into this whatsoever, the lore of the series is definitely intriguing to say the least. However, Kane isn't going to make this story so easy to understand or clear-cut. All of the videos are uploaded in some random order. Some may come before earlier ones, and some earlier videos could happen later in the timeline. Something I also really like is Kane's interpretation of the backrooms. Kane's explanation as to why these things are happening makes quite some sense once he world builds his world, you know? To try and summarize it myself, going against how I wouldn't dive into the lore earlier, there's a company called Async who managed to mess around with portals enough to stumble upon the backrooms. Their initial plan was to use this space as additional storage, should space for that run out on Earth. However, after a number of horrific discoveries and incidents, they shut the project down. And because of this, ever since then, missing persons reports have skyrocketed through the roof as people constantly, quote-unquote, no-clip through the ground and end up in the backrooms with no way out. Even the locations themselves, even if based on actual levels people made for the creepypasta, seem different, but make sense and fit into the story, or whatever's happening at the moment. It creates this sense of wonder, and yet you get this eerie and uncanny feeling that tells you that something is off. And as is usual for these types of series, something is absolutely off. Like something hasn't been told to you that's been held back from the viewer, leaving them to search for the answers themselves. And that kind of builds off the whole concept of what the backrooms is in the first place. A liminal space, unlocking a hidden fear in the human mind of being alone. Seeing these once popular places being completely abandoned and empty, not a soul on Earth, and yet you're there by yourself. And in some people, including me, there's that eerie feeling like you're being watched. There's someone there with you, when in reality, nothing is, and you're the only thing there. I also want to say that the world building in this series, while somewhat more limited compared to everything else, is very well done. He actively shows missing posters of missing people who have no clips into the backrooms. Any async tape with found footage is an absolute lore delight. And even the autopsy report, I think, was well constructed and sounded like an autopsy report. It's definitely the series I have the least to say about, sadly enough. But that's mainly because I want to leave this one for you guys to check out for yourselves. And Kane has managed to change the history of YouTube horror forever, and arguably for the better. And now that there's news of an A24 film allegedly in production with Kane himself as the director, I have very, very high hopes for where this series is going to go. To start, let's say that if you prefer world building, you'd like to know what the world itself is, what creatures or terrors lurk around the corners, and maybe how the public sees or adjusts to these things compared to our everyday lives in the real world. The first of these two series I'll talk about is most likely the most recent in terms of when its first episode was released, but became a smash hit and a fan favorite. This is Vita Carnis. Created by Darian Quilloy, I am so sorry if I butchered that. Vita Carnis focuses on its world building, on the environment in which the story takes place, and through its insanely well-crafted monsters. Starting with them, Darian absolutely knocked it out of the park with these monster designs. All of them come off as so unnerving, and they each look incredibly unique from each other, despite the commonality of being made of meat. There's something so uncanny coming from them, and it's truly spectacular. Not only that, but the way it's presented in the form of a nature documentary as its first episode was a very different yet interesting way of learning about these creatures, keeping it fresh. If anything, it helps differentiate each creature from one another, and how Darian ingeniously gave them different niches in nature. Starting with the crawl, they act as a spawning point for all of the Carnis, being able to grow practically anywhere, and when there are massive meat buds on them, they separate and form different creatures. The first of these creatures are the Trimmings, which are adorable little turtle creature things. They're treated mostly like pests, garbage-dwelling raccoons if you will, though some people keep them as adorable little pets that have also been turned into marketable plushies. Then, there are the meat snakes, large snake-like creatures who feed off the dead and use the skulls of their meals on their faces. They can also just use mitosis should they grow too large, but they won't go out of their way to kill anyone or anything since they're scavengers. Okay, a bit of escalation, but it can't get too bad with the third. The mimics actively target, stalk, and eat human beings. Yeah, so the mimics are thin, tall creatures that share some similarities with humans. They have massive eyes, toothy grins, can contort themselves into small spaces, can wear clothing, and are intelligent enough to stalk victims and learn their daily routines before killing them while they're asleep. And good lord, some of the sketches that Darian has made for these creatures are so eerie and haunting, yet I can't get enough of them. Just about everything about the mimics just feels so incredibly uncanny, and it somehow gets even worse. Yeah, so if these guys end up having too many humans to munch on, they become elder mimics. Their skin turns dark, and they have a bright face with a toothless grin as their teeth have slid into the back of their throats. And I thought the penis monkey was bad. Next, there's harvesters. These are massive bulbs with 150-foot long sets of bear-trapped tendrils, perfect for hunting wildlife or a family of 4. After that comes the hosts. These neck breathers release toxic spores into the air that take over the human mind for approximately 36 hours. After a myriad of symptoms, victims will begin to walk towards the host. Upon arrival, the victim will kneel down and offer themselves to the host as food. So what's worse? A pest, a giant snake, a whole species of serial killers, a living bear trap, or a biohazard? How about a kaiju? Meet the monoliths. Giant creatures made of hundreds of thousands of strands of pure meat. They just stand still, can regenerate, emit EMP waves and disable technology, and happen to stand in a perfect circle on an island in the Hudson Bay that doesn't exist in real life. Oh, and there's this black basketball, I guess. So, after hearing my description of each Carnis species, it's pretty obvious that Darian put a lot of love and care behind not only designing these creatures, but building them up in the lore as well. He does this especially well with the Harvester, going into a lengthy explanation of how the venom in the tendrils works, as well as the constant cycle of its eating, dragging the bodies down into the soil so that they become compound-rich soil for plants, which causes smaller animals to come in, luring larger animals for the Harvester to eat, rinse and repeat. And the other episodes offer to build up its world among its monsters as well, with a cooking show, a pet advertisement, a war archive, a PSA/found footage tape, an anomaly log, a cooking advertisement, and part of a monolith documentary. Each of these videos just goes to show how much Darian legitimately cares about the series and its world, making it feel as real and genuine as he possibly can, which I think he more than succeeds in. Plus, the series isn't even close to being short of any scares either. The iconic door-knocking returns from Gemini Home Entertainment. The Harvester log has some genuinely gruesome and agonizing audio that I'm not gonna play. The ending of the finale is completely chaotic and insane, but really good. And my personal favorite, an absolutely incredible found footage segment involving a mimic. Oh yeah, those are real fingers, by the way, and an actual head. And that's another thing I want to applaud Darian for, the insanely good-looking practical effects. I recommend checking out these two interviews with Darian as he goes a little bit more in depth on how he did these effects, and I'll link them in the description. But there are so many incredible effects to just make all the horror feel so much more real, like the closet scene I just showed, the Harvester attack, and best of all, the genuinely incredible trimming puppet. In addition to the horror and amazing effects, the story is definitely a crazy but believable one. Government cover-ups, cult activity, and even a storybook sprinkled in always keeps viewers guessing. And the whole finale itself completely flipped whatever I thought I knew onto its head. This series is just such a delight, hosting some of the best monster designs I've seen in such a long time, and combining those designs with such an interesting, well-developed world and incredible effects to bring it all to life. For anyone in the audience who wants to make creepy monsters or just build such a rich and expanded world behind these creatures, you better start taking some notes.
So what if you prefer your world building not through the things that go bump in the night, but the world itself? How about some alternate history? What if George Washington was found frozen in ice in the 1970s? What if Alcatraz Island was a living organism? What if oil tycoonist John D. Rockefeller and famous actor James Dean were, U.S. presidents? Well, if all of this sounds remotely interesting to you, this is the Monument Mythos. Starting on September 12th of 2020 and created by the now named Mr. Manticore, the Monument Mythos is an interesting take on alternate history through the lens of analog horror, dripping with tons of detail, straight-up eldritch concepts, and you guessed it, excellent world building. Unlike the previous series that I've already talked about, this series is unique with the many different time periods that the series is spread around and set inside of. Between old audio interviews with the man who built the Statue of Liberty in the late 1800s, documentaries about James Dean's presidency in the 1960s, found footage of what a Liberty Lurker looks like from the 1980s, events corresponding with the Air Force One Angel in 2003, and even May's movie maker videos taking place in modern day. It offers a vaster scope into the world that Mr. Manticore has built up that other series either don't have the luxury, time, or need to do so for theirs. With a series as complicated, complex, and convoluted as the Monument Mythos, having this many events spread around in different time periods, yet all connecting together, allow more space for the ideas and stories that Mr. Manticore wants to present and grow in this universe. Whether this pushes the boundaries of being considered analog horror is beyond me, but something that cannot be understated or debated is the conceptual horror that the series presents. As well as having a convoluted yet organized and planned out narrative, Mr. Manticore does an excellent job at presenting these terrifying monsters, ideas, and events, such being a living statue that wears human skin suits, strange Egyptian glass that when decapitating someone keeps them alive, a rapidly multiplying organism taking the form of Alcatraz Island that has spread to western Texas, halfway across the United freaking States, may I add, infinitely tall pyramids, whatever the hell happened to Mount Rushmore, strange trees that transport you across space and time, a giant freaking crab, creatures inside of national monuments, and a radical organization plotting to take down the admittedly shading United States government. All but to name a few of the genuinely scary concepts this series lays down and executes incredibly well. More than anything, however, this series does such an amazing job at immersing the viewer into the story. Similar to some of the characters who frequently appear throughout the story, we, the viewer, are all uncovering this information ourselves and learning about the shocking and disturbing secrets this version of the United States is hiding. Take the government cover-up plot point from Vita Carnis and amplify that by like 20 times. Each time new information is uncovered or a name is connected to a specific event, the satisfying shock of the realization is given enough time to sink into the viewer's mind and leave a lasting impact, with the viewer wanting to learn more and figure out what else is being hidden. I think that for this type of story, analog horror was the best way to portray it. And while not explicit or incredibly complex, the visuals themselves leave much up to the viewer's imagination, since they're mainly just diagrams and documents. However, as rare as it is, the found footage segments are also well done, like the ending of Liberty Lurker, the ending of Rushmore Revenge, and especially the ending of Freedom Faller. Production-wise, however, the star of the show is the voice acting. Whether it be amazing performances, oddly good impressions of real-life people, or a mix of both, Mr. Manticore made excellent choices when choosing his voice cast for the series. A couple of note are the chilling whispers of Howard Melrose after his encounter during Lincoln Looker, which was done by Mr. Manticore himself, Bartholdi's confession at the end of Liberty Lurkers, any of James Dean's president's speeches, and both of Virginia Arnoldson's tragic testimonies. Not to mention Mr. Manticore's great taste in music. Not to go too far off track, but he hit it out of the park with the music choice. That stuff got me groovy for weeks. Another detail I want to sing praises about that may go over the viewer's head are the methods of which the story is told in-universe. Documentaries about Dean's presidency, YouTube videos made by Dr. Disturbing talking about current events or past history, May's Movie Maker videos being scattered in the format of real-life Windows Movie Maker videos, historical archives not meant for the public eye, or declarations of defiance from the ADA or whatever name they decide to settle on. The use of these tools as a way to tell the story is very clever on Mr. Manticore's part, and again, does an incredible job of not only investing the viewer into the world, but also naturally explaining lore to further expand the scope of the story. Sure, there can often be a lot of things being thrown at you while watching this series at once. Lots of information is given with many names, dates, locations, events, etc., but then again, real life is the exact same way. If something like this were to happen in real life, I'd bet something exactly like this form of investigation would happen, and once again, I feel this adds to the immersion and realism and fun of piecing together the lore. If I had to describe the series with a singular word, it's intricate. Mr. Manticore has everything planned out and all the groundwork laid down. Everything fits in its place and naturally builds off of itself, and even though I've only seen the first 2 seasons, I have a good feeling that this intricacy and care will continue to be prevalent in the following seasons and projects to come. What Mr. Manticore does with his story, characters, and horrors beyond human comprehension is nothing short of astonishing and incredible, especially given the medium he has to work with. There are few, if any, analog horror series that put this much care and effort into enriching their world and background as much as the Monument Mythos does, and Mr. Manticore should be proud of this accomplishment of his. And on top of that, he still manages to squeeze in some of the scariest things I've ever seen in an analog horror. At the end of the day, this series ironically truly feels like a party in the USA. That was long overdue, wasn't it? So, if you were looking for a good place to start, I hope that I was able to offer you an iota of guidance in choosing where you want to begin your analog horror journey. Nowadays, many people like to claim that the subgenre is dying and losing popularity, but I'd argue the opposite. Even if some of these series don't sound appealing or compelling to you, I'm glad to say that there are so many more out there, just like any other genre. The Mandela Catalog, The Walton Files, any other FNAF VHS series, Angel Hair, Greylock, The Smile Tapes, Midwest Angelica, The Man in the Suit, The Boiled One, The Penis Monkey, No Through Road, Marble Hornets, Petscop, Dreams of an Insomniac, and Bois Vert, just to name a few. The genre is ever increasing, and new smash hits are coming left and right out of nowhere, that I'd be lying if I said this genre had nothing left to offer. Whatever you choose to begin your journey, whether it be any I listed or discussed today, or one you found on your own, go for it. Worst case scenario, it isn't for you, and best case scenario, you come across some of your favorite media the internet has ever made. And for those who came here to simply watch me gush about analog horror, thank you for sticking around as well. In fact, thank you all for sticking around. I know this is quite a long video that took even longer to make, but to those who stuck it out and waited patiently for me to get this done, I sincerely thank you for your time, respect, and willingness to hear me ramble for almost an hour. Like, subscribe, do whatever you want as long as you don't answer the knocking at the door, and yeah, I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.